Ogopogo research team has taken its probing cameras into UBC's biology building, where we're talking to Dr. David Suzuki. What can you tell us about the Ogopogo story?
We study animal droppings in the Okanagan area, and...
That lays it on the line.
That's very true, yes. Of course, I never touch them. I mean, they're very dirty.
Doctor, what is the evidence on Ogopogo?
Oh, yes, Ogopogo. Well, I don't think there's any question that Ogopogo does exist, and actually the evidence I have indicates that we'll have the proof very soon, if I can get a grant large enough to support me doing this kind of research.
And that's why you're on television today.
Oh, yes. Well, I wouldn't be so strong as to say it's absolute 100%. I mean, there is a probability that this creature does exist. I wouldn't want you to quote me on anything like that.
Let's not split hairs, Doctor. Let's get on with it. Have you done any research on the Ogopogo?
Well, I began my studies with the idea that Ogopogo was a mutant fruit fly. I just thought it would be an enlarged version, but as you can see, a fruit fly has 6 legs, and Ogopogo doesn't have legs, it's got fins, so I had to reject that hypothesis. I still think it was by far the most attractive one.
Other than that, the two animals have a lot of characteristics in common.
I think the resemblance is quite clear. I mean, Ogopogo may have tiny wings, but it has eyes, it has a head, and these segments may have been enlarged somewhat, but the remarkable similarity is clear to anyone, I think. Now, what the evidence I do have leads me to 2 hypotheses, and I can't really distinguish between them. It's clear Ogopogo has its origins in the Orient, and I think that it began when there was a huge influx of people from China and Japan who came in, you know, to help in the gold rush and to help build the railroad across the country. And my first hypothesis, which I tend to support, is that the Chinese who came in have a number of festivities when they have these dances and fireworks and so on. They were very homesick, of course, because there were only men that were brought over and they were missing their counterparts. So they constructed in the Okanagan area a giant replica of a dragon. Now, the dragon was a very sophisticated machine because it could swim, it could sink, and they put it into the lake and sank it. But it had a built-in time unit so that on certain days, when their festivals were to take place, it rises out of the ocean, out of the waters, and then swims about and sinks. Now, of course, in those days, they made things a lot better than they do now, so it's still around. And I think it's just a matter of time before I'm able to get some good evidence that it does exist.
To what extent is that historically documented?
Well, I've read in the Vancouver Sun about the coolies that were brought over, and I know all about the festivities from the records, comic books. There's very good scientific evidence for this, I think. Mind you, there are no droppings, as you might expect, but there are oil droplets from the joints and so on. Now, the other possibility, which I think is pretty far out, but it has to be retained, is based on a very thorough study I've done of the late night movies, especially on Friday nights. And as you know, if you've watched this at all, there seems to be a preponderance of these giant organisms like Godzilla in the Orient around Japan. In fact, I don't know if Japan's still around. The last movie I saw said that Tokyo was in big danger.
Is it possible the Ogopogo is directly related to Reptilicus, then?
Well, yes, a direct relation, in fact. I think one of the early Chinese settlers brought over a large egg, and the conditions of the Okanagan area were such that the egg actually incubated and hatched. And obviously, it has a very ephemeral kind of fecal deposit, because I haven't been able to get any evidence. You see, if the animal had an ordinary turd, it would probably settle to the bottom and be very large. That may be why the swimming conditions are the way they are in that lake.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.